You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 124, Deadlines. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, my beautiful brave hearts. How is everyone doing? I have spent a lot of time in the last 6 to 7 months creating something called the Braveheart Academy, which is a dream come true for me. This is where the Get Over Your Ex program lives, the Next Chapter mentorship lives. Everything I've ever created is under the Braveheart Academy. And I'm just so excited about it because now as I create new courses and new programs, I'm thinking about doing a private podcast within the Braveheart Academy. It all kind of has a home, and anything that I ever create is within that academy. So it's like, oh my gosh, here you are. You have access to the Get Over Your Ex program. You're inside the Braveheart Academy. You then get invited to the Next Chapter mentorship. It is just the funnest thing ever. And creating it was also very fun. Obviously, at times, rather challenging. But it's so cool. And it's just something that I am super excited about and very proud of. Now, with that being said, the Get Over Your Ex program is inside of that Braveheart Academy, and you can now sign up for this program at any time. It used to be something where there were rounds, there was a start-stop date, and there are no longer rounds. It is something that is open all of the time. So no matter when you find me, when you've gone through the podcast and you're like, I'm ready to up-level this, I'm ready to take this to the next level, I am ready to actually be in the program, you don't actually have to wait. You just get to dive in as soon as you're ready. And that's really important to me because obviously breakups happen more than just 4 times a year. So we've been doing all kinds of things inside of this program in the last 2 months, in November and December. I feel like I haven't recorded a podcast in forever. I have been spending all of my time and my resources and my energy in those paid programs because that is my favorite place to be. And in December, as I was wrapping up the year of 2021, it was really fascinating to me that I realized how many people ask me, when is the deadline to sign up? This was happening for both the Get Over Your Ex program and the Next Chapter mentorship. And I'm sure this has happened in the past, but I was just more hypersensitive and more hyper aware of it now because there's not actually a deadline, right? There's not like a deadline for the program, like it's going to shut down. And so it was just really fascinating to me. And it got me thinking about how often I had asked for deadlines before, like asking other coaches or bosses or teachers or mentors, when is the deadline? Especially for something that I wanted, like a result that I was creating, and I wanted a coach's help to go out and create that because I have done that too. I have asked when the deadline is. And it was just a very fascinating thing for me to start thinking about, and I've been thinking about it all the time. And I think the reason I'm seeing this as not necessarily a problem, but something that I keep thinking about is, why am I asking someone else to put a deadline on when I can get started on creating a result that I authentically desire? Why am I looking towards someone else to figure out when I should be beginning to create something that I deeply desire? Now, this only began to fascinate me because there was no deadline for the program, for my current program, right? And of course, there's deadline for bonuses. There's a deadline to be able to attend certain calls live, but ultimately you can sign up at any point for the program at any time. So my immediate response to people when they're asking me, when's the deadline, was there is no deadline, right? But then I got to thinking about like, what is your guys' deadline? What's a Braveheart's deadline? What's your deadline to stop letting someone take up valuable real estate in your mind? Why are you asking me for a deadline about something that is a problem for you? And I say that, and I'm saying that in the most loving way because I'm doing this too. I recently asked a coach in a consultation call, when do I need to let you know by? Meaning, when do I need to let the coach know by that I want to work with her? And it was like, oh my God, I'm doing that thing again. What was really going on in my head when I said that, when I said, when do I need to let you know by, what I was actually thinking behind that is I'm not sure that this is what I want to do. I'm not sure that working with you is going to create the result that I want. And I had hesitations about whether or not this was really the solution for me. So instead of asking the question, when do I need to let you know by, a more productive question for me and this specific coach would have been to ask her something like, I'm not sure this is the right program for me. Here are my hesitations, and can we walk through them to see what's coming up for me? Right? Because we have to get very clear about what's your deadline. What's your deadline to stop letting someone take up valuable real estate in your mind? What is your deadline to stop going back and forth with someone who is clearly not your partner or who clearly doesn't want to be in a relationship with you? What is your deadline to getting over your ex and moving on with your life? What is your deadline to creating a life that's bigger and better than the one that you had with your ex? And listen, you guys, I love deadlines. I genuinely do. And I get why we wait for someone else to tell us a deadline. It's almost like we get this anticipation feeling, and it's probably easier for someone else to create a deadline for us so that we then have to commit by a certain time frame, and then if we don't, we get to forget about it. And the fascinating part about all of this is when we're waiting on other people's deadlines, we are also pushing off a decision. Sometimes, like, am I pushing off the decision to get over my ex? Am I pushing off the decision to get a result that I want? Am I pushing off the decision to making time to create the result that I want? Am I pushing off the decision on figuring out how to create the resources necessary to commit to the result that I want? Just really fascinating to look at, right? So when you find yourself asking for deadlines, look at what you're really asking for. What is actually at play here? What are you really wanting to know? Are you avoiding a decision? Are you avoiding a commitment to a specific decision you'd like to make? And can you address that with the person you're asking for a deadline for instead of the deadline? I just think it would be a more productive conversation. Right? Or maybe a more insightful conversation. It doesn't mean that you end up, doing whatever the deadline is for, but it might be more insightful. And something to think about that I started looking at is the beauty and the main difference I see between Bravehearts who sign up way before the deadline when I used to have deadlines versus those who sign up at the deadline, which I just also want to preface, I'm not saying that's either good or bad or right or wrong because I personally have been both. Sometimes I sign up way before the deadline. Sometimes I wait until the actual deadline. But just from my observation, the sooner you decide to commit on something, the sooner you get the result. The sooner you're all in, and it feels good to be all in. I recently had a deadline for like quarterly taxes, and when I wait closer and closer to the deadline, the more anxious I feel about it, the more like energy it takes up before the deadline versus just, paying the taxes right when I know, like I think of it and then I go into the portal and then I just pay it and then I don't even have to worry about the deadline. Right? It feels good to be all in on a decision and a commitment. And I'll never forget on an open coaching call I did where someone signed up for the Get Over Your Ex program and then she still attended the free open coaching call. And she mentioned to me, she was like, I just felt so much relief after signing up. just from committing to her result, committing to getting over her ex and building an epic life. And I feel like that about all the things that I all the things that I decide and then commit on. And when there's a deadline in place and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for the deadline to end, I notice so much like turmoil and like back and forth and energy and resources. Again, another example of this would have been for my my certification, we have masterminds with the Life Coach School, and I'm going to the mastermind in April, and you could submit an inspirational video of 3 minutes or something. And the deadline was this past Friday, and I spent so much time going back and forth about whether I should do it, recording and re-recording, and all like this drama because of this deadline, instead of just being like, yes, I do want this result or I don't want this result. I'm going to do it and not wait for a deadline versus waiting for this deadline that was in place. It's just so wild, so fascinating to look at. It's almost as if deadlines force us to commit, but it's forcing us to commit on someone else's timeline, which is also arbitrary. It's an arbitrary date to them. So then it's also an arbitrary date for you. So what would it be like to figure out, do I want this result? Do I want the result sooner rather than later? And there's no right or wrong answer here. What do I actually think is keeping me from committing to this result or making the decision that I want this result? And then addressing that rather than looking for and waiting for other people's deadlines. So I want you to think about, are you setting your own deadlines or letting others do that work for you when you think about results you want to create? And beautiful time, because I'm sure 2022, you guys might have done intentions or goals. Are you setting your own deadlines or letting others do that work for you? Do you use deadlines as a way to avoid decision making? Like, oh, I have until this time to make the decision, so I'm not going to. Or are you committing to a decision or a result or avoiding it, right? If you do, look at the root of what's going on. So if you are avoiding the decision or the commitment, or you're letting other people set deadlines and you're asking people when's the deadline or when do I need to let you know by, just get curious with yourself. Like I said, I was doing this too, and it was just something that was very eye-opening and I wanted to share with you all here. What am I really trying to ask for when I ask for a deadline? Am I nervous to decide on a result, or am I nervous to commit to it? Why or why not? And then get coached on it. Coaching is a beautiful way to actually explore this and look at this from a neutral, curious place. And especially if this example is like asking for a deadline for a program, you should absolutely ask, and address what is coming up for you that's outside of the deadline. But I would even venture this towards and getting exploratory for all kinds of deadlines. Like I said, the deadline for the inspirational video, the deadline that I'm having to pay taxes. Like if I'm avoiding a specific deadline, why? And if I'm asking someone else for a deadline, why? And just getting curious about it. Now, all of that to say, I do want to mention you can join the Get Over Your Ex program whenever you want to now. You no longer have to wait to get in quarterly, because breakups happen all throughout the year. Like I said, not just 4 times a year. So honestly, I'm so proud to be able to give that to you and give you the ability to make that decision on your own without a deadline from me. When is your deadline, and when do you want to make a change, and when do you want to actually go out and create a result for yourself and learn the tools, practice the tools, build the skill set that I talk about here on the podcast? That's totally up to you. And I'm done setting deadlines for you. Of course, I will have bonuses and fun things like that, but I just genuinely want you to think about and start exploring setting your own deadlines, being your own advocate for creating a result, deciding on that result, committing, and then practicing being that person who has that result. All right, my loves, I hope you had an amazing Christmas and New Year. I'm sending you so much love, and I will talk to you next time. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course, where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.